My name is Isadora Vale, and at 32, I was once the heartbeat of London's interior design scene. My studio, nestled in a sunlit corner of Shoreditch, buzzed with the hum of creativity, sketches strewn across reclaimed oak tables, swatches of velvet and linen pinned to mood boards, and the soft clink of espresso cups as my team dreamed up spaces that felt like poetry. From sleek Mayfair penthouses to cozy Cotswolds cottages, my designs were whispered about in glossy magazines and at candlelit dinner parties. The life was a canvas, and I painted it with bold, confident strokes. A Georgian townhouse in Kensington that I'd restored with my own hands, its walls alive with art and memory, a career that sparkled like the Thames under a summer moon, and a husband, Lucien Warrick, whose charisma and success as a property investor made us the envy of our circle. Lucien was my anchor, or so I thought. We met at a gallery opening in Soho, where his sharp wit and easy charm cut through the pretension like a blade. He was a man who built empires, skyscrapers, and luxury estates that reshaped London's skyline, and I loved the way he saw the world as a puzzle to be solved. Our life together was a mosaic of late-night conversations over Bordeaux, weekends in Paris, and quiet mornings in our garden, where the scent of roses mingled with possibility. It was perfect, or at least it seemed so, until the night 2 years ago when everything shattered. If you're listening, thank you for joining me. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's walk through this together. The accident haunts me still, a jagged scar across my memory. It was a rain-slicked evening, the kind where London's streets gleam like oil paintings. I was driving home from a client meeting in Chelsea, my mind alight with ideas for a new project, when a lorry swerved into my lane. The world exploded in a cacophony of metal and glass. When I woke in the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air, and the weight of the truth pressed down. A severed spinal cord, paralysis from the waist down. My legs, once my companions on long walks through Hyde Park, were now silent. The wheelchair they wheeled me into felt like a cage, its cold frame a cruel reminder of all I'd lost. First, Lucien was my rock. He sat by my bedside, his hand warm around mine, promising we'd face this together. He brought me books, played my favorite jazz records, and spoke of a future where we'd adapt, rebuild. But as weeks turned to months, I began to notice the shift, subtle at first, like the slow dimming of a chandelier. His smiles grew forced, his visits shorter. I'd catch him sighing when he thought I was asleep, his shoulders tense as he scrolled through hospital bills on his phone. "We'll manage, Isadora," he'd say, but his voice carried an edge, a quiet resentment that stung more than the pain in my useless legs. At home, his gaze would flicker away when I struggled to transfer from the wheelchair to the sofa, and I'd see it, a coldness in his eyes, as if I were no longer the woman he'd vowed to love, but a burden he hadn't signed up for. London, once my playground, became a labyrinth of inaccessibility. My studio, with its narrow doorways and steep stairs, mocked my new reality. Clients drifted away, their pitying emails piling up in my inbox. And Lucien? He began to speak for me, making decisions about my business, my finances, my life, as if my voice had been silenced along with my legs. I wanted to scream, to reclaim the woman I'd been, but grief and exhaustion dulled my edges. Little did I know, the man I'd trusted with my heart was already plotting to erase me entirely. The man I married was slipping away, and I was too broken to stop him. Lucien Warrick, once my partner in every sense, had become a stranger wearing my husband's face. In the months following my accident, his tenderness eroded, replaced by a calculated efficiency that chilled me more than the damp London fog seeping through our Kensington windows. Our home, once a sanctuary of laughter and warmth, felt like a stage where I was no longer the leading lady but a prop, wheeled out when needed and tucked away when inconvenient. I was Isadora Vale, the woman who designed interiors for London's elite, but now I was reduced to a shadow, trapped in a body that betrayed me and a marriage that was unraveling thread by thread. Began with the finances. Lucien insisted I was too fragile to manage our accounts, my fingers too unsteady from months of rehabilitation. "Focus on getting better, Isadora," he'd say, his voice smooth as polished marble as he changed the passwords to our joint accounts. My studio, the heart of my identity, was next. He convinced me to sign over control, claiming it was temporary, a practical step to lighten my load. I was drowning in grief for my old life, so I agreed, too exhausted to argue. But the studio, once alive with my vision, began to shift under his command. My designs were sidelined, replaced by generic plans that bore Evelina Marwood's sleek, soulless touch. Evelina, Lucien's new assistant, was a public relations specialist with a smile as sharp as a shard of glass. She appeared in our lives like a storm cloud, her presence growing more constant, her laughter echoing through our home with a familiarity that made my stomach twist. Evelina was everywhere. She'd breeze into our dining room with files for Lucien, her heels clicking on the parquet floor I'd chosen years ago. I'd catch the way her eyes lingered on him, the way his hand brushed hers when passing a pen, a touch too deliberate, too intimate. Their private jokes, murmured over coffee in my kitchen, were a language I couldn't speak. "Just business, darling," Lucien would say when I dared to question, his tone patronizing, as if my suspicions were a symptom of my disability. I felt like an intruder in my own life, my wheelchair a barrier that kept me on the outside of their world. Evelina's perfume, a cloying jasmine, lingered in the air long after she left, a reminder that I was fading from the picture. My friends, once a vibrant part of my life, began to drift away. Invitations to gallery openings in Soho or dinners in Notting Hill dwindled, replaced by awkward silences and vague excuses. Lucien encouraged this, subtly steering me away from social gatherings. "You're not ready for that chaos," he'd say, his hand on my shoulder, heavy with control. "It's too much for you now." I believed him at first, blaming my own exhaustion, my own body. But soon my phone stopped buzzing, my inbox grew quiet. The isolation crept in like ivy, wrapping around me until I was alone in our grand house, its high ceilings and wide windows mocking my confinement. I'd wheel myself to the garden, staring at the roses I could no longer tend, and wonder when I'd become so invisible. Lucien's words cut deeper than his absence. "We're bleeding money on your treatments," he'd mutter, his eyes fixed on his laptop as if I were a line item to be slashed. "This house isn't built for a wheelchair," he'd complain, ignoring the ramps I'd begged him to install. Each remark was a pebble, small but sharp, piling up until I felt crushed beneath their weight. I began to doubt myself, to wonder if I truly was the burden he made me out to be. My disability, he implied, had broken not just my body but our marriage, our future. I clung to the hope that some fragment of his love remained, that the man who danced with me under the stars in Paris was still there, buried beneath his frustration. But there were moments, fleeting, chilling moments, that hinted at something darker. A glance between Lucien and Evelina, too knowing, too secretive. A late-night phone call he took in his study, his voice low and urgent. The way he'd pause when I asked about my studio's finances, his answers vague, his smile too tight. I didn't yet know the full scope of his betrayal, the plan he was weaving to erase me entirely. But deep down, in the quiet spaces of my heart, a warning flickered. The man I loved was gone, and in his place was someone who saw me not as a wife, but as an obstacle to be removed. Finian Vale was once my compass, the one person who could make me laugh until my sides ached, even on the gloomiest London days. My younger brother by 3 years, he was a lanky, earnest boy who'd grown into a thoughtful man, a freelance environmental engineer whose passion for saving the planet was matched only by his loyalty to those he loved. Growing up in our cluttered Camden flat, we'd been inseparable, sharing secrets over mugs of tea, sneaking into gigs at dingy pubs, dreaming of futures bigger than our working-class roots. But after I married Lucien Warrick, that bond frayed, and for years I believed it was my fault. I thought I'd pushed Finian away, too consumed by my glittering new life to notice his absence. It wasn't until much later, in the suffocating silence of my isolation, that I uncovered the truth. Lucien had stolen him from me, just as he'd stolen so much else. The realization came in fragments, like pieces of a shattered mirror reflecting a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. After my accident, when my world shrank to the four walls of our Kensington townhouse, I began to sift through old emails, desperate for connection to the woman I'd been. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows and Lucien was working late again, I stumbled across a digital journal I'd kept years ago, buried in a cloud account I hadn't touched since my hospital days. Entries were mundane at first, sketches of design ideas, notes about client meetings, but then I found a draft of an email I'd written to Finian, unsent, pouring out my longing to reconnect. "I miss you," I typed, my words raw with regret. "I don't know why we stopped talking, but I want to fix it." The date was 6 months after my wedding, a time when Finian's calls had abruptly stopped, his visits replaced by a cold, inexplicable distance. Confused, I dug deeper, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. That's when I found it, a series of emails sent from my account to Finian that I had no memory of writing. "You're causing trouble," one read, its tone sharp and dismissive. "I need space, Finian. Stop contacting me." Another was even crueler. "You're an embarrassment to me now. Please respect my wishes." My breath caught, a sick dread pooling in my stomach. These weren't my words, but they bore my name, my email signature. Someone, Lucien, had used my account to sever the one relationship that might have anchored me. He'd crafted a lie so convincing that Finian, hurt and humiliated, had retreated to Manchester, believing I'd rejected him. The betrayal was a knife, twisting deeper with every line I read. Lucien hadn't just controlled my finances, my career. He'd erased my family, ensuring I had no one to turn to when his true intentions surfaced. I wanted to call Finian to beg his forgiveness, but shame stopped me. How could I explain that I'd been blind to Lucien's manipulation for so long? Instead, I sat in the dark, the journal's glow illuminating my tears, mourning the years we'd lost. Unbeknownst to me, Finian was already piecing together the truth. In Manchester, he'd been haunted by my silence, by the stark absence of the sister who'd once been his confidant. A few weeks before that fateful night, he'd stumbled across my old journal while helping me recover a hacked account, a favor I'd asked during a rare, stilted phone call. The entries he found mirrored my longing, contradicting the harsh emails he'd received. Suspicion took root, and when he noticed my social media presence had dwindled to nothing, replaced by Lucien's curated posts about my brave recovery, Finian's instincts flared. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Driven by guilt for believing I'd abandoned him, and fury at the possibility that Lucien had orchestrated our estrangement, Finian returned to London. He didn't tell me he couldn't, not yet. Instead, he watched from a distance, tracking Lucien's movements through the city's maze of glass towers and cobbled streets. He saw the way Lucien moved with Evelina Marwood, their closeness too intimate for colleagues. He noticed my absence from the world I'd once commanded, my studio now a hollow shell under Lucien's control. Finian's engineering mind, trained to spot patterns in chaos, detected a threat, though he couldn't yet name it. On that cold autumn night, when Lucien bundled me into our car for a special outing, Finian followed, his beat-up Land Rover trailing us through the sodium-lit streets, out of London and into the shadowed depths of Epping Forest. I didn't know it then, but my brother's suspicion was my salvation. As Lucien's taillights vanished into the dark, leaving me alone in the forest, Finian was there, hidden among the trees, his heart pounding with the horror of what he'd witnessed. The emails, the journal, the years of silence, they all converged in that moment, fueling his resolve to save me. He'd lost me once to Lucien's lies. He wouldn't lose me again. That night, in the forest's suffocating embrace, Finian's presence was a lifeline I didn't yet know I had, a bridge across the chasm Lucien had built between us. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and fading summer when Lucien suggested an evening drive. "Somewhere special," he said, his smile a rare flicker of the charm that had once won my heart. I clung to that promise like a lifeline, desperate to believe we could salvage the wreckage of our marriage. In my wheelchair, tucked into the passenger seat of our sleek black Range Rover, I let myself hope, ignoring the unease prickling my skin as London's lights gave way to the shadowed outskirts. The city's hum faded, replaced by the whisper of tires on wet asphalt, and when we entered the dense embrace of Epping Forest, my hope curdled into dread. The trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky, and Lucien's silence grew heavy, oppressive. He stopped the car in a clearing, the headlights slicing through the dark before he cut the engine. The silence was deafening. I turned to him, my voice trembling. "Lucien, what's this about?" His face, lit only by the dashboard's glow, was a mask of cold resolve. "You're a burden, Isadora," he said, each word a blade. "I can't do this anymore." "I won't." My heart plummeted as he stepped out, opened my door, and lifted me into my wheelchair with clinical precision. He placed a small bag, water, a thin blanket beside me as if it could absolve him. "You'll be fine," he lied, his voice flat. Then he climbed back into the car, and with the roar of the engine, he was gone, the taillights swallowed by the forest's maw. I was alone, abandoned in the heart of Epping Forest, the chill seeping into my bones. I screamed for help, my voice raw, but only the distant hoot of an owl answered. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, and I imagined the headlines: "Disabled woman lost in forest, presumed dead." My wheelchair's wheels sank into the muddy earth, useless against the uneven ground. Panic clawed at my chest, but beneath it a deeper wound throbbed. Lucien, the man I'd loved, had left me to die. I closed my eyes, resigned to the cold, when a rustle broke the silence, a figure emerging from the shadows. "Isadora!" The voice was Finian's, my brother, a miracle I hadn't dared hope for. Finian dropped to his knees beside me, his face pale with horror. "I saw him," he gasped, his breath visible in the frigid air. "I followed you from London. I knew something was wrong." He'd trailed us in his battered Land Rover, driven by the unease sparked by Lucien's lies and my digital journal's revelations. His hands, rough from years of fieldwork, were gentle as he checked me for injuries, his judo-trained strength steadying my trembling frame. "We're getting out of here," he promised, his voice fierce with determination. He began to push my wheelchair, navigating the rocky path, when a low growl cut through the night, the Range Rover returning. Lucien had come back, his headlights pinning us like prey. He stepped out, his face twisted with panic and rage. "You!" he snarled at Finian, realizing his plan was unraveling. "You'll regret this." He lunged, his fist swinging toward Finian, intent on silencing us both to bury his crime. I screamed, my heart pounding, but Finian was ready. With the precision of his judo training, he sidestepped, grabbing Lucien's arm and twisting it behind his back. In one fluid motion, he forced Lucien to the ground, the damp leaves crunching under his weight. Finian's body trembled with fury, his knuckles white, but he held back. "You don't get to die here," he spat, his voice low and lethal. "You'll face the law for what you've done." Lucien, wild-eyed and cornered, scrambled to his feet and fled, the forest swallowing his retreating form. Finian didn't chase him. Instead, he turned to me, his eyes softening. "You're safe now," he said, though his voice shook. He pushed me through the forest, the journey a blur of moonlight and fear, until we reached a small wooden cabin he'd rented nearby, a safe haven tucked among the pines. Inside, the warmth of a crackling fire enveloped me, and Finian wrapped me in a blanket, his presence a shield against the night's terror. For the first time in years, I felt protected, not as a burden but as a sister, loved and valued. As I sat there, the weight of Lucien's betrayal crashed over me, but so did a spark of hope. Finian had found me, and together we would make Lucien pay, not with violence but with the truth. In the quiet of the wooden cabin, with the fire's glow casting shadows on the pine walls, I bared my soul to Finian. The words spilled out, jagged and raw, as I recounted the months of Lucien's manipulation, how he'd seized my bank accounts, locked me out of my emails, and wrested control of my design studio, all under the guise of protecting me. Each revelation was a wound reopened, but Finian listened, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing with a fury I hadn't seen since we were kids. "He won't get away with this," he vowed, and in that moment I believed him. For the first time since the accident, I wasn't alone. Finian wasted no time. He reached out to Cashin Holt, a private investigator whose sharp mind had once unraveled corporate conspiracies in London's financial district. Cashin, with his knack for decoding digital trails, dove into Lucien's financial records, unearthing a web of illicit transactions, funds siphoned from my studio to offshore accounts. Finian also contacted Serafina Locke, a lawyer whose fierce advocacy for disability rights had made her a force in London's legal circles. Serafina's calm determination steadied me as she outlined our strategy. We'd build an airtight case, not just for Lucien's abandonment but for years of abuse and fraud. Tantra Livia Sterling, a no-nonsense police detective with a reputation for championing survivors, joined our cause, her meticulous approach ensuring every piece of evidence was ironclad. Together, we amassed a damning dossier, forged emails Lucien had sent to my clients, passing off my work as Evelina's, bank statements revealing his theft, and Finian's sworn testimony about the night in Epping Forest detailing Lucien's attempt to silence us. Each discovery was a spark, fueling my resolve to reclaim my voice. But Lucien fought back, hiring Vincent Blackwood, a lawyer whose silver tongue and ruthless tactics had toppled giants in courtrooms across the capital. Blackwood's strategy was vicious. He painted me as unhinged, a woman broken by disability, delusional, and vindictive. "Ms. Vale's condition has clouded her judgment," he declared to the press. His words splashed across tabloids that turned my pain into spectacle. The media storm was relentless. Paparazzi lurked outside the cabin, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. Social media buzzed with cruel speculation, dissecting my disability, my marriage, my sanity. I felt exposed, flayed open for the world to judge, and doubt crept in. Could I withstand this? But Amaris Quinn, a compassionate victim advocate from the Crown Prosecution Service, became my anchor. With her guidance, I decided to fight fire with truth. In a small studio, my hands trembling but my voice steady, I recorded a video statement. "I am Isadora Vale," I said, looking into the lens. "I survived an attempt on my life by my husband, Lucien Warrick, who abused and betrayed me. This is my story." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of silence. The video went viral, shifting the tide. Public sympathy swung toward me, and our evidence, Lucien's fake emails, the financial trail, Finian's account of the forest confrontation, proved undeniable. Livia's investigation uncovered Evelina's complicity. She'd helped Lucien falsify documents, fully aware of his plan. In court, Vincent Blackwood's bluster crumbled against the truth. Lucien's composed facade cracked, his eyes darting as the judge read the charges: attempted murder, financial fraud, domestic abuse. He was arrested, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the handcuffs binding him. Evelina, too, faced charges for aiding his crimes, her poised exterior shattered. When the guilty verdict came, I sat in the courtroom, Finian's hand in mine, tears streaming down my face, not of sorrow but of release. Lucien was sentenced to years behind bars, his empire reduced to ashes. The victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to Finian, Cashin, Serafina, Livia, and Amaris, who'd fought beside me. As I wheeled out of the courthouse, the London sky was heavy with clouds, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Justice wasn't just a word, it was the foundation for the life I would rebuild. 6 months have passed since the courtroom doors swung shut on Lucien Warrick's fate, and I stand metaphorically in my wheelchair at the threshold of a new life. London, with its ceaseless rhythm of rain and renewal, has become my canvas again. I've built Aurora Design Solutions, a studio unlike any I'd imagined in my days of designing for the elite. Tucked into a cozy loft in Clerkenwell, its wide doorways and tactile surfaces welcome everyone, especially those who, like me, navigate the world differently. My mission is simple yet profound: to help businesses craft spaces that embrace inclusivity, where a wheelchair isn't a barrier but a part of the design. Each project feels like a stitch in the fabric of my healing, transforming the pain of my past into a purpose that lights up my future. Finian, my brother, is no longer a ghost from my childhood but a pillar in my present. Our bond, once severed by Lucien's lies, has been rewoven stronger than ever. He visits often, his laughter filling my loft as we sip tea and reminisce about our Camden days, or he pushes me through Regent's Park, where autumn leaves crunch under my wheels. Finian's courage in Epping Forest saved my life, but his unwavering support since has saved my spirit. He's taken to volunteering with Aurora, using his engineering skills to ensure our designs are as functional as they are beautiful. Together, we're not just rebuilding my career but a family, proving that love can mend what betrayal sought to break. Looking back, the forest that nearly claimed me has become a symbol of my rebirth. Its dark, tangled depths were where I faced the abyss of Lucien's cruelty, but also where I found Finian's light. I drive past Epping now and then, not to dwell on the terror but to honor the woman who survived. That night, I thought I'd lost everything, my mobility, my marriage, my worth. Yet it was the starting point of a journey I never expected, one where I've learned to live, truly live, not as a shadow of my former self but as Isadora Vale, whole in my own way. This journey has taught me 3 lessons I hope you'll carry with you. First, resilience is not the absence of pain but the courage to build something beautiful from it. My disability could have defined me, but I chose to define it, turning limitation into innovation. Second, no one is an island. Reach out, lean on those who love you. Finian, Cashin, Seraphina, Livia, and Amaris were my lifelines. Without them, I'd still be lost. Third, truth is a weapon stronger than any lie. Lucien's deception nearly destroyed me, but speaking my truth, however terrifying, set me free. These aren't just my lessons, they're universal, a roadmap for anyone facing their own forest of despair. I share this story not for pity but for connection. If you're listening, perhaps you felt trapped, betrayed, or invisible. Know this, you are enough and your story matters. Aurora Design Solutions is my way of proving it, creating spaces where everyone belongs. I'm no longer the woman who designed for Mayfair's elite, chasing unattainable perfection. I'm Isadora, a survivor, a creator, a sister who finds joy in the small victories, a client's grateful smile, a ramp that opens a door, a brother's hand in mine under a London sky heavy with possibility. If this story has touched your heart, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience and hope. Your support means the world to me. It's a reminder that we're all part of a community, lifting each other up. Let's keep shining a light on stories of triumph, stories that remind us we can rise no matter how deep the fall. Thank you for listening, for being here, for believing in second chances. I wheel through Clerkenwell now, the city's pulse syncing with my own. The roses in my garden bloom again, tended by hands that have learned to adapt. Finian jokes that I'm tougher than the oaks in Epping, and maybe he's right. The forest didn't end me, it began me. And as I sketch new designs under the soft glow of my studio's lamps, I know this. I'm not just surviving. I'm alive, and that's a victory no one can take away.